All right, I know many of you need to get to the Vine meeting, so we're going to move quickly here. The time is 5:01. Casey, could I get a roll call, please?
Christy? Present. Dana?
I apologize. I'm present late.
Dan?
Here.
James?
Here.
Could I get a motion to approve the absences, please?
I'll move to approve the absence of Katie Bortman.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Luis, do we have any new business changes?
Just scheduling stuff that I want to put to everyone. So I know that 3 people need to be in different places coming up pretty quick. If someone could, I don't know, you can just yell it out, but what time does the Vine neighborhood meeting start?
Well, 5:15 is when they're all going to meet up, and the meeting should start at 5:30.
Okay.
The email that went out was saying to directors that they may have to stay late based on how long it took for Jamari to get there.
Okay. And then I know, Reed, you have to be somewhere at 6, correct?
I think we should be able to hit all that.
Handle.
I'm happy to go after everyone.
So we'll get you on first, just because that's where that normally falls on the agenda too. The only thing that the amount of stuff to cover, I think, in the second item is a lot more than the stuff to cover in the first one. I want, everyone to feel like they're not rushed and stuff. I guess I'll kind of defer to you guys what you think should go first and then what should go second.
Looking through it, I think we should probably do the Vine project first, change the schedule slightly, just so that they can get to the Vine meeting, right?
Okay.
Yep. I mean, that's my thought.
You're talking about 802 South Burdick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, well, let's keep moving then. Any public comments for non-agenda items?
You can come up. Yep.
So hi. I'm not good with public speaking, as I said last time I was here, so I wrote a letter that I'd like to have everybody sent out. So I'm the property manager for the Vine Neighborhood Association. My job is fiscal responsibility as well as taking care of my tenants. So we were here before for a historic window replacement. The commission approved an Anderson 200 window. That window in particular cannot be ordered in multiple dimensions, so it can't fit the existing size, which is part of the code that you can't change the opening of the window, which requires us to go to an Anderson 400 window, which is more expensive, right? So for one unit, the cost was $11,000 to replace 2 windows. So then, happenstance, I ran across the board meeting that you had last month, and there was a contractor here, and you all approved an Anderson 100 window, and a board member brought up the fact, are we setting a precedence to approve a lesser window when we made the V&A buy a more expensive window, which I appreciated that board member bringing that up, because that was actually what was going through my head at the time of watching the meeting as well. So I did a little math on it, and it's a $1,300 savings, so $2,600 on one project, but if we replaced all the windows in our building, it would save us $71,000. Kind of a big deal, right? Yeah. That's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal in maintaining the integrity of a building that I think is the staple for the neighborhood. Part of the reason why the V&A bought this building was to kind of maintain that business district. So I guess what I'm asking is, would the commission consider allowing us to do Anderson 100 windows instead of the 200, even though the Anderson 100 window that was approved last time has no wood in it? I've written a letter exactly asking what I'm looking for, but pretty much what I've asked Louise for, and we've kind of went back and forth over the last 3 years, is there's a contractors list available, but it hasn't been updated in years. I understand that there's some hesitance in endorsing any contractor, but allowing the contractor list to be updated based on people's license, not based on people's work, so that people have more access. And then maybe having some type of list of windows that you all approve, or some kind of guidelines of windows that you're going to approve. So like what it seemed like last month was a very biased interaction, right? Somebody came before you, they got a lesser window approved based on the fact that they didn't come to the historic district the first time. They put in a vinyl window, so they didn't ask permission,
Right.
put in a random window, had to take it out, and got approved for a lesser window because they didn't ask permission. And when I left the commission last time, you guys said to me like, hey, send people my way. We want people to do their projects and do well. But it's hard for me to think about that because I would be endorsing who knows what when they get approved. We don't really have any reference point on what's being approved. We don't have any guidance. It's just like a case-by-case basis on what you guys decide, but how is that to be interpreted for every property owner? And I think that's what one of the board members was saying to the collaborative last month, and it sparked me to be here just because, well, one, these are the things that I've been asking Louise for the last couple of years, was a list of reference windows that have been approved before, and then an updated list of contractors. And I understand that that list of contractors was something that Sharon Ferraro did and maybe is not endorsed by the same director, but we still have the list out there and it hasn't been updated. And so if you go to try to find a resource on that list, people aren't available. So like brick masons aren't available, and then you kind of leave people subject to finding whatever contractor they can find, and then that could be me finding a contractor who's a really good contractor in the neighborhood who I know will do the building right and do the job exactly, I'm sure, the way that you guys would want, but at a price tag of $11,000 per unit. It kind of makes it so that the rules that are being superimposed on the building make it almost so that we can't afford to maintain it in the way that you guys would like to, given the policies.
Right.
Does that make sense?
All that does make sense, and I definitely see your point on that. I would, I guess there'd be a couple points. One is we don't, when you're, basically, whenever someone fills out an application and brings it before them, we're not telling them what to put in. And so if you would have started with the 100, the Anderson 100 windows, maybe, I know it might have passed. So we just don't, per your point, we don't have a list of recommended products, right?
It took me 3 years, Dan, to get to a point of conversation with Louise to even come before you to ask about windows. And so I went for what is the policy, which
Yeah.
is a wood window.
And I get that, but we have people come before us. I'm not sure why it would take that long, because we do have, most of what we do is windows, and it's just like normal people that, aren't working with an organization, and maybe there is some clarification that we have to figure out on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think any infrastructure to the HDC, like lists and all that, that would be something that the other commission would make up, right, and give us guidance. Is that, because we haven't, as far as I know, as a commission, we've never made anything like that, a recommendation list or a decking, we're just enforcing
What if there was
people-
just an approval list? Hey, these are all the various types of windows we've
I just don't think
approved.
we as a commission have that
Okay.
authority to do it, or the infrastructure to do that. I mean, I would refer to Luis on that, but by creating a list and maintaining that list, then inherently that's weighted a certain way because there's so many products out there. And I see your plight. I mean, you don't know what, where to begin, I guess. And that is a real issue. And I'm not 100% sure what the solution is, but I just don't know if that's something that this commission can solve, is what I'm getting
Absolutely.
at. Yeah, we're just giving the guidelines to follow, and if you bring a window to us that is in the spirit of what you're trying to do, more than likely we're going to approve it. So
Okay.
that's,
All right. So where we are right now is we've completely paused that project because
you
of
could,
this.
and in this, you could totally just reapply with that window.
Absolutely
and
pay
come on.
another fee and reapply, and that's okay.
Probably would.
I don't mind that, but I'm just
You
saying.
probably wouldn't even have to pay another fee. I don't know. I'd refer it to Luis.
I would wait until I saw it, and I do want to be respectful of other people's time, so the
absolutely.
general comment period is not necessarily a time for discourse, and I apologize.
I'm sorry, I
So-
wasn't intending to, and I'm
No,
just
and I-
responding based on how I'm
No, and I think it was
interacted
directed at everyone. Just kind of following the directive from the city commission that it's just a time for the commissioners can make a comment if they'd like, but I know that we do have some tough guidelines or some tough timelines to meet right now. And
Can I
want to make sure
submit
that
this letter and I'll be done?
Of course. And if you want to follow up with Luis, and again, we emailed, and my schedule is completely open to whenever's.
I think what I heard from my property manager board chair is based on how the meeting goes, whether the board will be back with me next month.
Okay, that'd
Yeah.
be great. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jen.
Sorry, I didn't know we can have back and forth conversation.
No, I think that's we don't honestly have a lot of guests at this commission, so.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So could I get a motion to approve last meeting's minutes, please?
So moved?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any guests that need to be introduced tonight that aren't on the list? Okay.
And I just want to be clear and reiterate one more time that we are saying that we do want to, I know that we have tight timelines for both of them, and we do want to move, you're saying the second item up to the top.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. There's no additions to the agenda?
No.
No, okay. Could I get a motion to adopt the formal agenda, please?
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Luis, would you mind reading the disclaimer, please?
Yeah, one moment. Chapter 16, Section 22 of the City of Kalamazoo Code of Ordinance states that historical preservation is a public purpose. To serve that purpose, the Historic District Commission is hereby charged with the following responsibilities. A, the Kalamazoo Historic District Commission is empowered to regulate work on the exterior of historic resources and non-historic resources in historic districts in the City of Kalamazoo, and shall otherwise have all powers invested in Historic District Commissions pursuant to the Local Historic Districts Act, MCLA 399-201, and 1970 PA 169 as amended in 1992. B, to regulate work on resources which, by city ordinance, are historic or non-historic resources located within local historic districts, including but not limited to the moving of any structure into or out of, or the building of any structure in an historic district. The following documents are available in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department located at 245 North Rose Street. These documents will help assist property owners in understanding the responsibilities of owning property in a local historic district. MCLA 399-201, 1970 PA 169 is amended in 1992, which is the Michigan Local Historic Districts Act. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Kalamazoo, Michigan, specifically Chapter 16, which deals with historic districts. Secretary of the Interior Standards for the Rehabilitation and Guidelines for Rehabilitating Historic Buildings, 1990, Standards and Guidelines for Kalamazoo Historic Districts, and Maps of Kalamazoo Local Historic Districts. These documents and maps are also available on the City of Kalamazoo website at www.kalamazoocity.org/historic preservation.
Thank you for that very brisk reading. So we're moving on to applicants. So let's move to the Vine project first. 802 South Burdick.
If you could just state your name and your affiliation with the project.
Jamari Bogan. Good evening, commissioners. Here with Bogan Developments and the developer for the project would be on Burdick. I will let Jason Novotny take it from here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jason Novotny with Tower Pinkster. I am our Vice President of Design and happy to share with you this next iteration of the project. If you'd like me to take you through some of the details that are included in your packet, it should have 5 sheets in total, just want to make sure that everybody has each of those. And if possible, I guess I'd like to say there's a few things that we've been spending most of our time and attention to as we've been working through both historic district guidelines as well as city zoning and planning, right? So there are some things that happy to talk about that may have some impact or guidance on how the building has been designed or conceived of. But what we're looking at this through is the lens of standards 9 and 10 as they would apply to this project, which is for new construction. So just maybe to kind of level set, so we, in Standard 9, we will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. So wanted to make sure that as a level set, we're all there in that same headspace. And then secondly, the standard 10 is reads to, they'll be undertaken in a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and the environment will be unimpaired. So should this project not be realized or should it be taken away in a later date, the fabric of the historic district would remain intact. So a few of the things that we look at when we design a building is we think about the way that a person would experience new construction as compared to the buildings that are immediately adjacent and around in the neighborhood. And for us, that is the hand and the materials and the texture that are being used. So what you're seeing proposed for the elevations here are 2 tones of brick. There is a dark gray to black tone on the corner, and then there is a conventional red-brown brick, which will draw much more into the character of the neighborhood. So we have a kind of an anchoring corner, and then we have steps back into each of the 2 facades as they move down Vine and down Burdick. We elected to use the red brick on the long facades of each of the 2 of those, and we break that up, as you can see in the elevations here, into sections which are varying between 20 and 30 feet. So the city has a zoning requirement which says we need to break the materials every 60 feet. Truly, in more historic character, being in the 20 to 30 foot range of bay spacing is a lot more conventional to the size and scale of construction that you would see. So we used that as a way to break down the scale and the mass a little bit further in the design. The other 2 materials that you see that are gray tones would be metal panel materials. Those are not unlike materials that you would see on a project like 400 Rose as a recent example of using similar materials in combination with brick. So we're using quality materials, durable materials, materials that will last. And the strategy that we used in designing the 5th floor of this building was to switch to a lighter material, which will blend more with the sky and really makes the building scale down to a 4-story building with a 5th floor that's a bit less apparent. So that's a little bit of an architectural approach to bringing the scale down even closer to the pedestrians. As you see on the screen, you're able to see the screens in front of you? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So you see on the top elevation here, that would be the elevation along Vine. There are balconies which have been integrated for the residential users, as well as a common area balcony. To the further right, you see a stepped down facade of 2 stories. So this is what we talked about previously. As we move from the corner as a 5-story, we shrink it down to a 4th story by lightening up that facade, and then we shrink it down to a 3rd story with just the brick that wraps around and some of the community mural that we had talked about near the preschool area. And the fencing itself in that area would be a part of the preschool. Our window and door systems will be very much a conventional system, so we're proposing an aluminum system and or a fiberglass painted system. The impervious system, which is used on many projects, is a long-lasting, durable system, and it can be painted a number of different colors to match in our opinion, working with those openings and the sizes, we want them to be more vertically oriented and paired up, which again, we're not trying to mimic historic character with this, but we also don't want it to feel foreign. So there's a balance to be struck between the size and spacing of those windows. You don't see large expanses of glass in the residential areas from floors 2 up, so that those do feel like individual residences in that series of brick. But for the first floor, we have a zoning requirement to meet, which says between 2 and 8 feet high, we have to be 70% glass. So the first floor is inherently going to be much more visible and much more contemporary in the way that it looks, to try to blend or bring in the streetscape requirements as a part of city zoning. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the kind of back and forth, some of the influences on the design. Do you want me to go any further into any of the materials or any of the design approaches that we put into it?
I was unclear from the material that you supplied. What is the setback
The setback off of the property lines?
off of the sidewalk?
Are we able to go to maybe the first or the second slide if possible?
Yeah, the first one always renders.
Yeah, but I wasn't,
Do fine, I think.
couldn't really tell.
Okay.
Like, what,
So
is that
the-
comparable to the setback of the houses on the other side of the Vine?
The setback off of the sidewalk to the
yeah.
houses.
Yeah.
On the Vine side, we are at where the lot line is at. The houses across the street are also fairly close to the lot line. They're within 10
okay.
feet of it. And then we're set 5 foot off of Burdick because that's our main street, so we're going to make a little bit more green space along the Burdick side. And that would also, we have to, I know it's a little push-pull, but we have to be 0 to 10 feet because of the zoning district that we're in. So we're intentionally not going to build both sides right up to it, and we're softening the corner with some outdoor seating.
So is there some public aspect of this as well, like stores on the first floor? And then if so, is the parking on-street parking, or is it like an entrance to the parking behind it is like one and in and one and out?
Yeah, the first floor uses, the corner use would be a restaurateur. We have a space for a small market and food store. We have a healthcare facility / gym, and then we have the preschool area. And there are a few, by a few I mean less than 10 parking spaces which are provided as parallel street parking as part of the renovations of this project, and then the remainder of the parking is on the back side of the building, and there are entrances from both street frontages from Vine and Burdick, as well as from the back side, that allow you to access a common lobby and get to all those business uses within.
I was just curious on what the traffic, I'm sure you did studies on this, but like how the traffic affects the people that are already in the neighborhood, and if like you're expecting people to come in more on Burdick or more in on Vine, is there a design choice on that for you where you're trying to direct people or feel like they're going to use?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to step in, but I just want to make sure that we do adhere to the historic stuff, and we don't generally look at landscaping for that.
Fair enough,
And
fair
I
enough.
just get that we're going to have questions about the project, but I just wanted to keep us
Okay.
on the historic.
Yeah,
for
go
now.
ahead and strike that. Yeah, none of my business.
No need to strike, but I just wanted to make sure that we do stay on it because we don't deal with a lot of big projects like this. And I think the other thing sorry that I didn't tell you, gentlemen, before you came up, like I said earlier, we do have only quorum right now, so that means you will need a unanimous vote if you'd like to move forward with it. This evening, you can always elect to postpone it to a later date, but sorry I didn't say that at the top of all this. So,
Understood. Mhm.
and I'll pass it back off to the commissioners if there's more questions.
So my problem with this project is not, if it looks like a great project for something that's not in a historic district. So despite your discussion about how you've taken into the historic aspects into account, I have trouble, one, because I drove around the area, got out and walked around the area, and 5 stories one, seems excessive. Two, the mass and the scaling just don't seem to fit with the immediate neighborhood. Now, I understand that there are tall buildings, there's a church, but churches are supposed to be tall, and it's not, the church isn't that massive anyway, and there are other buildings blocks away that are like that, but that just seems not to fit. If I saw this architectural rendering or photographs in a historic architecture magazine, I would think somebody screwed up. But I wish that you had put in with these renderings the other buildings that are across the street, that are next to it, so that it would present, it might have made your point better. I don't know, because when I walked around, it just seemed like that is way too big and does not match the mass and the scaling of people across the street, who are the most immediate historic district, are the people across the street and the people on the corner of Vine and Burdick, yes.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I guess my only comment on that would be, I spent a lot of time in 400 Rows. I have a business there, and that's about the same mass if you want to, compare that. I mean, there's no historic buildings really left around that one. They've all come down.
They've all come down,
Yeah,
and yours is, yeah, that's the point. There are still some historic homes there.
Yeah.
Well, and 400 Rows is 4 stories, not 5. So it is shorter, and I don't disagree with Dana. I kind of also, like, every time I drive home and I go down Vine Street, I look at that corner and I think, God, 5 stories is just massive. I mean, you can say, the building on the corner, the brick one, it has, I think, I don't know if it has a slight turret or something. That one technically is 4 stories, but everything else steps down quickly to be 2.5, 3. So, yeah, and I think the rendering on Burdick Street, like, that's a long building. And I don't have a solution or a counterpoint, but I did appreciate hearing about all of your thinking about the exterior materials, because my first take was, why do we need 5 exterior building materials? But I do deeply appreciate the integration of the red brick. I think that's a very nice nod to what's around it. I think that's a very good insight. And I also appreciate hearing the intention of the lighter siding kind of dissipating into the sky. So I do appreciate that, and I think it does make it feel visually smaller. And looking at the Burdick side rendering, I mean, you could theorize that the alternation from gray paneling to red to gray to red kind of feels like different homes, maybe. So yeah, I guess those are my comments. I also worry it seems like a lot of building in one large mass.
Now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it, what comes to my mind a little bit is the Marlboro building, which is that really large apartment building.
That's blocks away.
No, it is blocks away, but I'm saying, I was thinking, like, when that was built, I'm sure there were some concerns on that, and yeah, I just feel like that turned out to be a good idea. I don't know if there's any guidance or anything that we should be thinking about for the height, because honestly, until you brought it up, I wasn't even thinking about the height part. I was thinking more about the materials and the architectural style.
Yeah, so these are things that it might seem like my report was short for this one, but there's not like a lot of stuff that we have in our guidelines for new construction. And, first of all, I just want to say that the Standard 9 does not stipulate that we are only looking at the historic areas to consider the environment, I think is an important one. So I think a lot of people, when we think about this, we're stopping at Burdick and we're looking west. And if we look west, you will see a drastic step down. Even though 1 block to the north, there is a massive 9,000 square foot building, and there's the church across the street, which, like you said, with the steeples and the turrets, do make it rather tall. I'm on Google Maps right now, and I'm looking north at the intersection, and there is the senior skyrise, which is, I believe, the tallest building in the city of Kalamazoo. And then directly to the east of this is Bronson Hospital, which is massive. I mean, I think that certainly speaks to the massing to me when we look at it, because it's directly in the sight lines when you're standing there. I did note that the proposed building is going to be larger than the surrounding residences, and I don't think that there's any debating that question when we look at this. But I think that there are other things within the immediate sight line that are of similar or larger massing, is what I outlined in my report.
I'll share along the design process to Commissioner Kastner's, or Board Member Kastner's point. We looked at this in all brick, and when it's all brick, it looks even more significant than the approach that we've taken to try to break the scale down. So I will say it isn't for a lack of looking at other alternatives or methods to, bring the scale down, drop the belt line down, so to speak, to try to get this to feel as pedestrian as we can with the design concept. I do agree Vine's an eclectic place. There's a lot of different size and scales of projects and types of uses that are, intermixed throughout it. So our hope was to try to bring a little bit of some of each of those into a singular building, and yes, to make it feel like there's multiple buildings there by changing the materials and stepping the facade in and out rather than a long continuous facade.
I agree with Christy that it does almost look like it's separate, almost like row housing or something, but at the same time, it still gives a little bit of a feel of like an old industrial building to me, which I like. That I think that would match well with a historic district without creating a false sense of history there. So I think it works well, and I like the step down to the 3 stories on is that the Vine Street side? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just one more comment. I do take your point, Dana, on it does feel very large. But then in the other side, I'm weighing all the stresses of housing going on. And so, I don't know, it seems like the good might outweigh that point in my point of view on that one.
That's not part of the standards.
That's fair. Yeah, that is
It's not
fair.
it's not part of the standards. That's not what this committee is charged with doing.
Right.
So what if it were only 4 stories?
From a developer's point of view, then we don't have a project. I mean, that's just being transparent. But again, the zoning now allows us to go to 5 stories, which was approved by our planning commission. The buildings adjacent, as mentioned prior, they're really cool, eclectic building across the street on Vine, and the parking ramp, right across on Vine and Burdick. All those buildings are fairly tall. I mean, 4 or 5-story buildings, and they all anchor corners. And so again, when this project was thought about in 2016, the city, Vine Neighborhood Association, Edison Association, LISC, and Bronson Hospital all came together and created a strategic plan to put this project together. So this wasn't Bogan Developments or Tower Pinkster decision. This was a community decision to anchor this corner with a building that was 5 stories that still captured the character and the essence of the neighborhood, but moved the community forward. And that's what we're looking to do here, which is capture the community, listen to the community, and then move it forward with something unique and different, but still capture the essence. So this is a community effort. This isn't just our team. And we leaned into the community when we decided to construct and design this building.
Are there members of the community here to speak on this?
Unfortunately,
Good. There, yes.
so Nadine, who's actually an architect at Tower lives in the Vine Neighborhood Association, Vine Neighborhood. Again, we didn't have any community members who were part of the crew in 2016 join us, but I'm sure Bronson and other neighborhood leaders would support the words I just echoed.
Did you want to speak?
I didn't say one comment.
Yeah, would you mind coming up, please?
Hi, I'm Nadine Rios-Rivas, architectural designer. I've lived in the Vine neighborhood since 2017, my first home, actually. I really enjoyed my time there so far. I just want to make a comment of my experience driving from my home on Rose down to the hospital campus. And obviously, I'm part of the design team too, but I think the transition of height for residential, I know that it's, we have that 3 to 5 jump, but from my experience, I think that would be a nice transition in height as you enter the campus, which all those buildings are partly around the same height size. My comments on that.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else have any comments? Barb, would you like to? Oh, you gotta come. Yeah, come on up. Oh, no, you gotta come up to the thing. And state your name and where you live, please.
I'm Barb Shell. I live at 828 South Rose.
Thank you.
For the last 30 years. The question that I have is, do the ladder trucks can reach the top of that building?
Yes.
They can?
Yep.
Okay.
We work with the fire marshal to make
Okay.
sure there's a fire lane and fire access and proper height.
Great. Being in an old house, that's kind of my concern,
Sure.
if there's going to be a fire.
Okay.
And I don't think I have any other questions.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'll just add, I would think the mixed-use nature of a building like this would bring in, I don't know, the kind of life that you want in a neighborhood rather than the liquor store and the empty houses that are there now, and I think that's a net positive.
Again, not part of the standards. Come on. This is a historic district commission.
But I believe Luis was saying that the height isn't really part of our.
Mass and scaling.
And that's largely
Mass and scaling.
up to interpretation, I think.
It is. But let's focus on those standards and not other things that are not relevant to our discussion.
I think just regarding the massing, like I know we're referencing the parking ramp, which fine, architecturally, whatever. I understand it's the point about mass. The parking ramp is only 4 stories, and that's the closest next building. And then I would also say that the parking ramp is set back further from the street, has lots of trees around it. I would argue it's more eclipsed and tucked in, and you can't see such the massing. And I understand that Bronson Hospital is down the street, and absolutely, it is massive, but this new structure will sit kind of at the top of a hill coming up Vine Street, and I think that may only exacerbate 5 stories in that setting when the hospital is down the hill and feels a little smaller.
I do just want to address that my interpretation, when we're speaking about massing in architecture, we're speaking about the way that the building is put together. That's why I addressed that it's an L-shaped building. So you could have like an irregularly massed building that was a circle that had spokes coming off of it to look like an asterisk, right? That would be a very irregular massed one. And I just want to make sure that we're all using the same language. I think that the things that you guys are referring to are size and scale, and the massing would be another one, a separate thing to speak to.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do think, though, the step-down style you have on the Vine Street, I think is a very tasteful, thoughtful integration there. So I do appreciate that.
Again, I know this is not a design workshop, but I also think we need to hear everybody's input, and I want to commit to trying to find a way to make this project move forward. So the strategy that we used along Vine Street to step down to that 3rd story, which gets you more to the scale of the homes adjacent to it, we could take a look at the top left corner of the screen that you see here now, which is the south edge of the Burdick side that's in that perspective, and try to go towards a similar design where we step that corner down to bring that down to the neighborhood scale. I'm not running the pro forma, that's Jamari's job. I trust him when he says the project won't happen if we have 4 stories. So I'm trying to look at architectural methods to try to bring that scale down, maybe drop that corner down to get you back to a neighborhood scale that rises up to the corner and then steps itself back down. I think we could continue to work on looking at options to make the numbers work, but I think we've done most everything we can to try to get that scale down and still have a building that meets the program needs too. So I don't know how that sounds to you all. I don't know if that's worth an investigation or might be a compromise to help us bring it back down to the neighborhood on both the west and the south side.
I like that.
Does anyone have any more comments or questions? Okay, so before we make a motion though, Dana, are you saying that you would like to see them explore that, and then how do we work that into the motion?
Don't we have to make a motion to approve and then move from there?
So there's, realistically 3 options. Approval, which would be the same motion as a denial, and then postponement are the 3 viable options that we can move forward on. I just want to make sure, again, reiterate, we have to have unanimous vote tonight for the motion to carry, right? The second thing that I want to reiterate is that I don't want to put anyone into a weird limbo of doing things, but I also just be mindful, I guess, of that when we're making the motions, when we're moving forward, right? I don't want the applicant to be stuck into a limbo if we vote to do something and then that couldn't happen, and then I don't want the commission to be stuck, I guess, in essence, a limbo. This is probably not the right way to phrase it, but just keep that in mind, because I want to make sure that we have very concrete motions when we're moving forward with things, so we can all be held accountable for the motions that are made this evening.
So, before we put this one together, because we have quorum, I again want to make sure that, like what Luis is saying. So, realistically, like if we're asking them to change the design, they're going to have to come back to the next one, which is a month from now, which delays the whole thing. I don't want to put anyone in a spot where they're voting for something they don't, believe in. But that's kind of where we're at with a quorum situation.
Yeah, I guess one of my questions for conversation would be, I also kind of would like to see the option of like, could we step it down? But then are we going to, what if we then see the step down design and somehow we're like, it's less successful? Then do we have to say, can we revert back? Like, I just think that's kind of a waste of everyone's time. So I guess that's kind of what I'm struggling to understand here. Because like,
Sorry,
are you looking to have 2 options next time?
And we're speaking, I'm assuming, and I just want to be crystal clear about we're speaking, it seems to me, to the size and scale as it relates to standard number 9, correct? Okay.
Yes. So full transparency, I do not intend to vote in favor of this. So now we have a couple options. One is to postpone it for the reason to come back with something else. I get your point. I have faith in the design team, but there's an option. Or, you take an appeal from this decision.
So knowing that, you do have the opportunity to postpone the vote for the next
I think when we look at the postponement next time, we're going to be at a quorum situation again, because you won't be able to attend, unless there is a special meeting that was called. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to logistically think through things as we move through here. And I'm not, I mean, I think that what you're bringing up these are all very valid points. So I just want to, before we said, like, let's just come back in July, we know that we are short right now in our commission. We just had someone resign from the commission last month, which brought us down in number already. And then we had a member that was absent this month, and we know that we're going to have a member absent next month as well. So just putting that out there as well. Again, we do only have the 3 options, but I think to me what it sounds like now is that the 2 viable ones that I would look at would be, you know, like postponement or approval. I don't think that if we're asking for additional information, a denial is appropriate. Right.
Is there a way to move the time of the next commission meeting so that our other person could attend?
I could look into scheduling a special meeting.
I guess the question for me is, what do we need to see that's different? We need to see a smaller building at 3 stories. We need to see a 4-story building. I'm troubled because this is what the community wants, right? This is what we've been asked to take on and do on behalf of, you know, our neighbors, the neighborhood, the city, our partners, and in those meetings, in those conversations, we've had community charrettes, we've had neighborhood discussions. This neighborhood discussions have been going on outside of us for now almost 10 years. And now we're at a point now where the state has a whole program for employer-assisted housing, and all these incentives are out in front of us. A delay does, I mean, I'm just being quite transparent here. It doesn't just cost money to the developer, which I'm a young developer trying to do this work, but it also really, you know, destroys projects. I mean, we have great momentum. We have amazing uses that'll come out here soon who we're going to be partnering with, but, you know, we're tasked with doing what the community wants, and that hurts a developer who's trying to do what the community wants, and then the community comes back and says we no longer want that, or it troubles me. And so when we have more developers in our community who are looking to do things, will they lean into the community like we do if the community is still not going to respond, you know, according to what the broader data has indicated is desired? That troubles me.
Let's be clear, a no vote on this is not a no vote on the idea. It is not a negation of what the community wants in terms of a multi-use building, in terms of restaurants, in terms of healthcare, in terms of affordable housing. A no vote on this is a no to that rendition of that project.
I have one more question. Last time you guys were here, you had not yet had the community input meeting. Was this rendering shared at the community meeting?
Yes, and we reiterated the building because of that. So we had community again around the table. We had a charrettes. We've received phone calls. We've been listening. We've been leaning in, and we've been adjusting every time. And again, we're doing projects listening to the community. This does not happen. And so what I'm laying out here is that will developers listen if the developer who's listening is still getting not getting the support, for such a project that's going to be, a catalyst, and it's going to bring activity, and, we're taking out the neighborhood liquor store. I mean, we're really moving the needle here, and we have significant folks who are investing in this, but it takes all of us. This commission has to buy into the vision, to what we're trying to do, and so I'm really, trying to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, my comment is, like I've been transparent. I lived across the street from this blighted block for 20 years, and it didn't get developed in time for my stay there, but my friends and neighbors still live in that area, and postponing the vote or I don't know, I'm fearful because I've seen other developments just fall apart and not happen, and I would be very sad to see, something fall through and then not happen there for another 10 years, because that's your lifetime of living at a house. And honestly, like, coming back, I don't know what we're going to get different. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like the project is pretty designed. I mean, I'm sure we would get, maybe we're talking like a little bit of a setback, but honestly, sitting here, I don't know if I would even notice that once it was built, like if that would make a difference in my eye. And so that's where I'm at. But I can agree that I'm a little blinded to this because I am so close to it and passionate about that part of the Vine. So.
What's driving the 5 stories? Can you talk more about that?
So one, we wanted to attract new business to the area. And so part of that was trying to get a first floor commercial, which 400 Roses is a beautiful building by partners of ours, but it doesn't have all ground floor commercial. We wanted to bring that kind of element to the neighborhood, adjacent to the hospital. So we're having a cool restaurant concept, childcare, of course, and we have a gym baked in there that all would really feed downtown in a way that it's not being fed right now. I live downtown. Those uses aren't there. And up top, of course, is 4 stories of residential. And again, in order for, the cost for construction is not cheap today. So if you want to build a property or, you have to get to a certain amount of units to really make everything kind of pencil. And so, this is what is allowed by zoning. This was also, again, as I keep echoing, what this community wanted. And so we landed at a pace where, if we're going to build a building that's 5-story, because that's what the community wanted. The community also said, hey, as this phases in, can you drop the building? So we dropped it. Can we get artwork? We'll add artwork. Can we get native trees? We'll put native trees. Can we get on street parking? We'll add on. We're doing the things. And that's what I'm saying, we're committed, and it's a lot of time, and we're really committed to doing the work. So,
Okay, well, thank you for that. So I guess, we as commission make a decision now, like either we vote to approve, make a motion, vote to approve, or we postpone to maybe a special meeting time that is not yet figured out.
or could we have maybe, God willing, you guys be willing to approve it? Could we have Jason and team, sit down with you guys and kind of go through, understanding how we got here, maybe a feedback session with the historic commission after this, to maybe talk about why we did this or why you guys think that, and maybe that helps feed into the greater context of the building as we continue to iterate. But today, we would love to have really your support here, because we're carrying a heavy load and we need everybody.
I'll reiterate.
What was just asked for then essentially was conditional approval, in essence, probably, right? Looking at something and then coming back later, is that what you were kind of speaking to?
Could we do that?
I just wanted to make clear that that's what the ask was, because it did sound like it to me. So we, like I said before, have not really addressed projects of this size underneath my tenure, and I completely recognize that. In the past, underneath Sharon's tenure, there certainly was a stipulation written onto every single certificate of appropriateness that stipulated that you guys approve it, but final responsibilities were delegated to the Historic District Commissioner, or the Historic Preservation Commissioner. That's not something that I think we generally look at with residential projects, because it's very fleshed out, small residential projects, right? We don't have, the scale between the two is truly apples and oranges. I think even when you look at some of the things that we were looking at for the local standards and guidelines, I did not feel that they applied, because it does not necessarily make sense for a building of this size to adhere to the setbacks that we look at for historic houses. For one, in my opinion. There's things about driveways which that is completely out of context when we're looking at this, because if every driveway is on the right side of a house on a block, it does not make sense here at all. So those things I did take out because they don't make sense. So some more background for that kind of stuff, right? considerations, those were some that I had when I was writing it. It's, again, apples and oranges. So, I mean, the commission could, if they wanted to, elect to make a conditional approval, which would say that I'm guessing, would want to have something come back to us to look at the drawings at a later point, right? We need to see things, if there needs to be changes. Conditional approvals happen in other spaces, I think, and it's just something that I wanted to float out there as well, right?
I'll just reiterate that I think we're just disagreeing up here about how we interpret things being compatible in terms of size and scale and massing. And I like how you explained it with the breakup of the materials and how that creates, it doesn't make the building feel quite as long to break it up like that. The lighter fifth story, I liked that explanation as well. It makes sense to me. So I personally don't have any problem with the size of the design that you have there.
I guess, well, while I've been thinking up here, I love what you're doing on the Vine Street side. Do I wish maybe the Burdick side felt a little smaller? Yes. But how do you do that? I don't know, because I hear you. You're trying to get a certain number of units in a certain square footage. If we ask you to adjust the building, then that probably affects your parking spaces. I totally get that. I see the struggle. I think too, you know, part of me recognizes that this is just, it's a big visual change for that corner. So whether it's 4 stories or 5 stories, it probably will feel massive. Like, it just will, objectively, compared to the 1-story convenience store that's right on the corner now. So I think even if you appeased us and gave us a new rendition with like a step down or some other solution on the Burdick side, I don't know that it would change a lot for me. So I think it's a lot of change. I think you've done your best to create a building that honors the neighborhood with the red brick. I think you've been intentional about the materials creating what I'm seeing as like that rhythm of like the gray brick and then like feeling like homes. So I think you've done a good job of honoring the guidelines, honoring the neighborhood, and I think the longer I've sat up here, I would probably vote yes on this rendition. So I think you're doing the best you can to be respectful of what we've asked you to. So I do appreciate that. It's just a lot of change, I think, too. So thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, it is a big change for the neighborhood. Yeah, so I'm going to look to you guys. What do we want to do? A motion, or
Are we going after conditional, or?
where are you at on it, Dana?
Be honest, it's okay.
Dana's always honest.
I'm still a no on this rendering of it. I'm still a no. So now it's up to you.
Are you open to a conditional, like where we approve it with them coming back with some setbacks on the upper floors?
I don't know, because I'm not a designer.
And I recognize
I'm
that.
looking at a rendering, and that's what we're given, is renderings. If you want to give me a different rendering, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of pressure right now, and I won't say bullying, but there's a lot of pressure right now for me to change my vote. And I hear what you're saying, and I understand it. I think that there's a project going up across from me, across the street, which is a huge project. But it's only 4 stories, and if it were 5 stories, I would have a problem with that. So the massing You drive down that street and you've got these cute little houses, and I just don't think this is consistent with the environment in which it's in on the Vine Street. I just don't think, and then there are some residential-looking buildings on Burdick. They're not necessarily residential, but they're residential-looking buildings.
But Commissioner Underwood, will you be willing to allow us to do additional work and maybe receive conditional, as it stands today, come back when we're finally designed this out and have a full conversation, while also, in the meantime, maybe bringing you in and some of the board members to really have a deeper discussion so we can get to a final solution? I think that would be helpful for us, for the project, for the community, where we're working together to solve for the condition that exists for the both of us.